I think I finally nailed my Sony JPEGs. And before anyone criticizes me for that, there's nothing inherently wrong with Sony JPEGs. It's just that Sony JPEGs tend to be quite realistic, and if that's what you're looking for, that's great. But if you're trying to get a more stylized look that might resemble what you're looking out of your edited image, just straight out of camera, Sonys aren't usually your first bet, and that's where Fuji had their claim to fame. Because what Fuji JPEGs are often really praised for is the fact that they have a certain set of tools that allow people to customize the results straight off camera, closer to what they might be looking as their creative intent as an edited image. And that's what I try to do with my Sony camera. And I think I finally landed on some settings that have been making me really happy with the results. I'm using the A7C II, and these settings are going to apply to a bunch of the modern Sony cameras. Older Sony cameras might not have all the settings I'm going to be showing here, and we can talk about how you can adapt it later. So let's take a look at some results so we can talk about what these settings are all about. So we have really striking red tones. They're deep, they're slightly orange shifted, and they're quite saturated. They make for a really striking look when you can get nice red subjects on scene. The greens are also really cold and also stand out quite a bit from the image, and the skies, the blues, are cyan tinted, which are also my personal preference. The contrast is quite sharp as well. It's quite a contrasty look with really lifted highlights, and that makes for images that really pop. So let's take a look at these settings, but please keep in mind that if you just replicate the settings, you're not going to get results that are close to what I've just shared. You're going to have to follow some exposure, white balance, and DRO guidelines that I'm going to be showing you after the settings right on this video. So just a quick thing, if you'd like to download these settings as a PDF, you will find a link in the description down below. There you will also find the option to buy me a cup of coffee if you like the results you're getting out of this and you'd like to support the kind of work I put into these settings. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can just put 0 and you'll be able to download it for free. So when it comes to my creative look settings, I've been using the FL creative look and +2 on the contrast, -4 on the highlights, -1 on the shadows, 1 on fade, -1 on saturation, 3 on sharpness, 3 on sharpness range, and 2 on clarity. White balance for daylight is 5800 Kelvin with the shift A3 and G0.5. And I'm always shifting this white balance. When I go indoors, I'm usually using something around 3500, 36, maybe 4000. And in daylight, I'm shifting usually from 5600 Kelvin right up to maybe 6800 Kelvin when I'm in a golden hour scene or something, maybe a little warmer. Okay, so about those guidelines, let's start off with the exposure, which I think is really important. You're gonna have to basically always underexpose at least a little bit with the FL creative look. The FL creative look has a lifted gamma curve that makes your image look brighter than what you exposed, than the raw image. That means we're gonna have to be fighting with underexposure to get a really nice, deep, striking image. If you don't, you're just gonna get a washed out image that doesn't look really good. And if you like the results I shared previously, don't be afraid to really underexpose if necessary. Depending on the DRO level we're going to be using, that we're going to talk about on the next chapter, you're going to have to underexpose even more. So I've had to underexpose as far as 2 stops when I was using a stronger DRO setting such as level 5. So when it comes to white balance, of course, you're gonna have to nail it too if you want really nice results straight out of camera. And as I shared on the settings, I've been using a manual Kelvin white balance for that. But I've set my camera up in a way that's really easy to shift that Kelvin white balance if necessary. So if I want a certain scene, maybe a golden hour scene, to look warmer, it's really easy, just a turn of a dial. And indoor scenes, as I shared previously as well, I'm usually lowering it to maybe 3600 or 4000 Kelvin. And I'm gonna share how I set the dial to directly adjust the white balance on my A7C II. So here, when I'm shooting in A mode, what I'm doing is that this front dial, adjusts the aperture. The back dial here adjusts the ISO. Here I'm adjusting the exposure compensation, and this back dial here, I'm adjusting the Kelvin white balance directly. And here's how you can do that. Just gonna jump into the menu. I'm gonna go right down to setup, dial customize, custom key dial set. And here you can separate M mode from other modes. So you can set the back dial to Kelvin instead of also adjusting AV/TV. So if you're using S mode, this front dial is going to adjust the shutter speed, and the back is going to adjust the Kelvin as well. And when I'm in M mode, this left here goes directly into the white balance. And if you just turn the dial, it's already adjusting the Kelvin. You don't have to click right. So just click here and adjust directly. Okay, and lastly about these settings, we're going to talk about DRO, and DRO stands for Dynamic Range Optimizer, meaning it's a way Sony cameras expand the dynamic range on your JPEG by lifting the shadows. Yeah. And if you have maybe a backlit scene or a really high contrast scene, you're going to be wanting to use a higher level of DRO if you need to lift those shadows up. Thing is, the way Sony cameras lift those shadows with DRO isn't just localized completely on the shadows, and it means your perceived exposure is gonna expand a little bit as well. I guess the midtones are being lifted a tad, which means the exposure looks higher when you use a higher DRO level. So if you're using a higher DRO, you're gonna have to underexpose even further, which is why on some scenes I've had to go as far as -2, 2.3 stops of underexposure. I'm gonna throw a few examples here of high DRO and high underexposure shots on the screen right now, just so you can take a look at the kind of settings I have had to use. And now lastly, what about RAW shooting, right? I always shoot RAW plus JPEG. I'm never throwing out those RAWs. And why is that? I don't hate editing. Even though I really like getting good results straight off camera, sometimes I feel like editing my shots and I like to have the RAW there. And also software is always evolving. So maybe in a few years, we're gonna have some breakthrough software that's gonna make one of my images look amazing. I don't know. So I'm always saving those RAWs and editing if necessary. But the work you put into shooting the JPEGs isn't lost when you go to RAW, especially if you can use the FL creative look. For example, in Photoshop and in Lightroom and Capture One, you can just pull that FL look in your images, almost completely edited, and you have a very similar look to what you'd have on the in-camera JPEG with all the flexibility that the RAW will give you. So it's not a waste of time to use these settings if you're gonna be shooting and editing your RAW as well. You're gonna get some nice JPEGs and you're gonna be able to edit your RAW with no problem. So that's my personal preference. I'm always shooting RAW as well as JPEGs, and you're gonna have to do whatever suits you the best. So if you enjoyed this content, obviously I'm not a YouTuber, I'm just making this video to help people out, and I'd really love to be able to start a community to share some of these settings to make straight out of camera JPEGs look even better with our cameras. And I'd really love to hear your thoughts down below on the comments. I'm not sure if I'm gonna put a new video soon or if I'm gonna go another 12 years without a video, but if you'd like to subscribe and follow along, maybe I'm drop a banger next week. I don't know. So really nice to talk to you guys, and see you soon.